I left Denver before 7 with a replacement anemometer strapped down in the truck bed and the weather report saying snow was coming over the weekend. Not a blizzard. Just enough to make the roads miserable and shut down any work at height for 3 or 4 days. Which meant if I didn't get the sensor swapped today, the whole job would slide into next week, and Kai would have my neck about it at the Monday meeting. The anemometer was the expensive kind. Carbon fiber housing, digital readout, the whole package. I'd signed for it at the yard Thursday afternoon and locked it in the storage cage overnight because leaving $1,200 of equipment in a truck bed wasn't my idea of smart. This morning I'd strapped it into the bed myself, double-checked the ratchets, and made sure the foam padding was tight around the mounting bracket. Anne was waiting by the gate when I pulled around. She had her high-vis vest over a gray hoodie and her hair pulled back tight, safety glasses clipped to her collar. She looked ready. "Morning," she said when she climbed in. "Morning." She buckled in and set her thermos in the cup holder. I could smell the coffee. The good kind, not the yard sludge. We rolled out onto I-70 and the city started thinning behind us. The sky was that flat, pale color you get in early spring when the sun's up, but hasn't warmed anything yet. I kept it at 70 and let the engine settle into its rhythm. Anne pulled out her logbook maybe 10 minutes in and started flipping through the pages. She was tracking certification hours. Needed another 40 or so before she could run solo jobs. That was fine. She didn't talk much unless she had a reason, which I appreciated. "So this is a standard replacement?" she asked. "Yeah, anemometer on a weather station. 20-foot mast. Should be straightforward." "What failed?" "Bearing seized up. Thing stopped reporting 2 weeks ago." She made a note. Then she asked about the ladder setup, and I told her we'd use the extension from the truck and anchor it to the mast collar. She asked if we'd need a spotter, and I said probably not, but we'd see when we got there. She wrote that down too. I didn't mind the questions. She was careful, methodical, the kind of person who checked the load rating twice and read the whole procedure before starting. Some people thought that made her slow, but I'd take slow and alive over fast and stupid any day of the week. She started talking about the yard schedule after that. Something about a reshuffling of the depot assignments and whether the overnight shift was getting moved to 10-hour blocks. I wasn't sure. I hadn't been paying close attention to the emails lately. I gave her a non-committal grunt and she kept going, working through the details out loud. I figured she was just processing it. That was fine too. The highway stretched out flat and straight. Not much traffic. A few semis westbound, a couple of sedans going our direction. The plains opened up on both sides, all pale grass and fence lines and the occasional cluster of grain silos way off in the distance. I'd driven this route maybe 30 times. It didn't change much. Anne was saying something about the new tags for the confined space equipment when I saw the Limon exit sign. "We're stopping," I said. She looked up. "Here. Coffee, fuel, bathroom if you need it." "Yeah, okay." I took the exit and followed the ramp down to the access road. There was a Sinclair station right off the interchange. Blue and green sign, 6 pumps, a little convenience store attached. I'd stopped there before. It was fine. I pulled up to the pump and killed the engine. Anne grabbed her wallet and got out. I followed. The air was cold, not freezing, but enough that I zipped my jacket up. The wind came steady from the west, no gusts, just a constant low pressure that made my eyes water a little. I swiped the state card at the pump and started filling the tank. Anne went inside. Through the window, I could see her walking the aisles, probably looking at snacks or checking the coffee situation. The pump clicked along. 40 gallons. 50. These trucks had massive tanks. When it finished, I replaced the nozzle and went in. The store was warmer than I expected. The clerk was behind the counter, a woman maybe late 20s with sandy hair and a Sinclair polo. Her name tag said Judith. She was ringing up Anne, who had 2 tall coffees in those to-go cups with the plastic lids. $6.80, Judith said. Anne paid cash. Judith handed back the change without much ceremony, and Anne brought the coffees over to me. "Got you the medium roast," she said. They were out of dark. "That's fine." I took one and she kept the other. The cup was hot enough that I had to adjust my grip. I sipped it carefully. Not bad. A little weak, but it was warm and it had caffeine. There was a TV mounted on the wall behind the counter, one of those small flat screens they put in gas stations to keep people from getting too bored. It was tuned to a local weather channel. I watched it for a second while Anne browsed the snack shelf. The forecast was showing the same thing I'd seen that morning. Mild today, increasing clouds tonight. Snow starting late Saturday and lasting through Sunday. Accumulation maybe 3 to 5 inches on the plains, more in the foothills. Nothing severe, just enough to be annoying. The meteorologist on screen was pointing at a map with thin, high clouds drifting over the eastern half of the state. She looked calm. That was usually a good sign. I finished half the coffee and turned toward the door. That's when I saw the paper tape next to the exit. It was just a printout. Black text on white paper, the kind you'd run off at home or in a library. The heading said Limon Siren Test Schedule in bold letters. Below that were a bunch of dates and times listed in 2 columns. I scanned it without really thinking. First Saturday of every month at noon. First Wednesday at 10 in the morning. A couple of other entries I didn't bother reading all the way through. I registered it. Small town thing. They probably had a tornado siren or a fire alert system and they tested it on a schedule so people didn't panic when it went off. Made sense. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. Anne followed a few seconds later, a pack of trail mix in her hand. "Ready?" I asked. "Yeah." We got back in the truck. I set my coffee in the holder and started the engine. Anne buckled in and tore open the trail mix. I pulled out of the lot and headed south. County Road 22 was 2 lanes, cracked asphalt with gravel shoulders and no center line. It ran straight for a while, and then started to curve gently as the terrain shifted. Flat fields gave way to low rolling hills, still mostly grass with patches of scrub and the occasional windbreak of cottonwoods. The weather station was about 12 miles out. I'd been there once before, maybe 6 months ago, to replace a solar panel. The site wasn't complicated, just a 20-foot mast with the anemometer at the top, a data logger box at the base, and a small solar array to keep everything powered. No cell service, so it used a satellite uplink to report. Quiet spot, middle of nowhere. Anne was quiet now. She'd finished the trail mix and was looking out the window, watching the fields go by. I kept my speed steady and my eyes on the road. The coffee was helping. I felt a little more awake, a little more locked in. Except my mind kept drifting. Not to the job. The job was fine. I knew what I was doing there. It was everything else that was harder to organize lately. The apartment lease was up in 2 months, and I hadn't started looking for a new place yet. My sister had called 3 times this week, and I'd only answered once. There was a recall notice on my personal truck that I'd been ignoring for 5 weeks. Small things, manageable things, but they kept stacking up and I kept pushing them back. And now it felt like I was always 1 step behind on something. I didn't like that feeling. I gripped the wheel a little tighter and forced myself to focus. The job, the route, the sensor swap, one thing at a time. Anne shifted in her seat and I glanced over. She was looking at the logbook again, flipping to a blank page. "What's the mast height again?" she asked. 20 feet. She wrote it down. I turned my attention back to the road and kept driving south. The coffee was still warm when the radio cut out. About 20 minutes past, Limon, County Road 22 had settled into the kind of driving that doesn't need much thought. Straight sections, gentle curves, nothing aggressive. Anne had closed her logbook maybe 10 minutes back and was watching the fields roll past. I had the window cracked an inch because the heater was running a little hot and I didn't feel like messing with the dial. Then the radio just stopped. Not static, not fade, just gone. Half a second later, it snapped back on with that emergency tone. You know the one. That flat, mechanical shriek that cuts through everything and makes your spine straighten up whether you want it to or not. I'd heard it before. Tests mostly. Occasionally weather. Never out here. The tone lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then an automated voice came through. Female. Calm in that way that feels worse than panic. The National Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for the following areas: Lincoln County, Elbert County, El Paso County north of Highway 94. Persons near the intersection of County Road 109 and State Highway 71 should take shelter immediately. Persons near the intersection of County Road 22 and County Road 2J should take shelter immediately. Anne sat up straighter. The voice kept going. This is not a test. Seek shelter in a basement or interior room away from windows. Mobile homes are not safe shelter. Remain indoors until the warning expires. Then it looped. The tone again. The same voice. The same intersections. I glanced at Anne. She was already looking at me. Are we near 2J? She asked. Past it about 5 miles back, I said. The radio kept looping. Same tone, same message. County Road 109 and Highway 71, County Road 22 and 2J. I looked out the windshield. The sky was overcast, yeah. Had been since we left Denver. Gray, flat, nothing dramatic. No green tint, no wall clouds, no rotation. Just the same dull ceiling I'd been watching all morning. The prairie grass on both sides of the road stood mostly still. A little movement here and there where the wind caught it. But nothing like the kind of blow that comes before a tornado. I've seen that wind. Seen it flatten whole fields in one direction like someone combed them. This wasn't that. I slowed the truck a little, not a lot. Just enough to get a better look. Anne had her phone out. She tapped the screen a couple times, then frowned. Got the same alert, she said. Tornado warning. Lincoln, Elbert, El Paso. Make sense to you? I asked. She looked out her window, looked back at her phone. Not really, she said. The radio looped again. Same intersections, same instructions. I checked the rear view. Nothing behind us. Checked the side mirrors. Empty road, empty fields. A fence line maybe a quarter mile to the west with a few cottonwoods clustered near what was probably a dried-up creek bed. No rotation, no debris, no nothing. Anne was still looking at her phone. Her thumb moved across the screen, scrolling. There's another one, she said. Another tornado warning? No, different. It's... Hold on. She turned the phone toward me. I glanced at it, then back at the road. Saw enough to catch the header. Some kind of alert. Red banner across the top. Chemical release, Anne said. Airborne hazard, Lincoln County. Avoid outdoor exposure. I kept driving. Didn't speed up. Didn't slow down. When did that one come through? I asked. Same time as the tornado warning, I think. Maybe a minute after. She pulled the phone back, scrolling again. It says, avoid outdoor exposure and stay in a sealed building until further notice. 2 warnings. Same county, same time frame. Tornado and chemical release. That didn't happen. Not together. Not unless something had gone extremely wrong in a very specific way. And even then, you'd expect more detail. A location, a facility name, something. I looked out at the grass again, still barely moving. You smell anything? I asked. Anne sniffed, shook her head. No. See anything that looks like a plume, smoke, vapor? She leaned forward a little, scanning the horizon through the windshield. Nothing. The radio looped again. Tornado warning. Shelter immediately. I checked the dash clock out of habit. Wanted to know what time the warnings had started so I could figure out how long we'd been sitting in the middle of whatever this was supposed to be. The clock read 9:48. I blinked. It had been after 10 when we'd left the gas station. I'd checked it while the pump was running. 10:03, maybe 10:05. We'd been driving for at least 20 minutes since then. The clock should have read 10:30, give or take. I stared at it. 9:48. Then, while I was looking at it, the numbers rolled. Not forward. Backward. 9:47. The engine didn't stutter, the headlights didn't flicker. The heater kept blowing warm air through the vents. Everything else stayed exactly the same. Just the clock. Rolling backward. Smooth and clean, like that was a normal thing for a clock to do. I didn't say anything for a second. Wasn't sure what to say, wasn't sure I'd seen it right. Then Anne said, "Did your clock just—" "Yeah," I said. She looked at the dash, looked at her phone, looked back at the dash. "My phone says 10:26, she said. The truck clock read 9:46 now. Still rolling backwards, slow, steady. I eased off the gas a little more, not a lot, just enough to buy a few more seconds to think. The radio looped again. Tornado warning, chemical release. The sky stayed gray and flat. The grass barely moved. And then the sound hit. It rolled over the cab from somewhere I couldn't pin down. Low and heavy like a semi passing too close on the highway, but deeper. Felt it more than heard it. A pressure that pushed against the windows and made my ears pop the way they do when you drop elevation too fast. The steering wheel tugged left. Just a little. Just enough to notice. I corrected without thinking, hands tightening on the wheel. The tires squirmed. That's the only word I have for it. Squirmed. Not a skid. Not a slide. They grabbed and released and grabbed again, like the asphalt under them had gone soft. Like I was driving over fresh tar instead of 30-year-old county road. I let off the gas completely. Didn't hit the brakes. Just let the truck coast and tried to keep it centered. The pressure sound faded. Took maybe 3 seconds. Then it was gone, and the road felt normal again. Anne had both hands braced against the dash. She didn't say anything. I checked the mirrors again. Still nothing behind us. Still nothing to either side except empty prairie and fence lines and cottonwoods that didn't care what was happening. The radio kept looping. The dash clock read 9:43. I looked out at the open country, the fields that went on forever with nowhere to hide and nothing to stop whatever was wrong from getting worse. Walls, I thought. I need walls. "We're turning around," I said. Anne looked at me. Didn't argue, just nodded. I slowed the truck down to maybe 20 miles an hour, checked the mirrors one more time, and started a wide turn. The road was narrow, but the shoulders were flat enough. I swung out to the left, cranked the wheel, and brought the truck back around to face north. Back toward Limon. Back toward the gas station with the Sinclair sign and the siren schedule taped to the door. The work order could wait. The anemometer could wait. The whole job could wait. I pressed the gas and the truck moved forward, picking up speed. 40, 50, 60. Anne was still holding her phone, still watching the alerts scroll across the screen. The radio looped again behind us. Tornado warning, chemical release. Shelter immediately. I kept my eyes on the road and drove north, away from the weather station, away from the open prairie, toward the only thing that made sense right now. Walls, 4 walls, and a roof. Someplace that wasn't out here. The dash clock read 9:41. I didn't look at it again. The siren started when we were still 2 miles out, not the test tone. I'd seen that schedule taped to the Sinclair door maybe an hour ago. First Saturday at noon, first Wednesday at 10. Clean 12-second bursts with gaps in between. This was one long, continuous wail that didn't stop. Anne heard it the same moment I did. She looked up from her phone. That's not the test. No. I kept the truck at 60. The dash clock still read something in the 9s and I'd stopped checking it. My phone was in my jacket pocket and I didn't feel like digging it out to compare timestamps with Anne's. The road was still empty. Fields on both sides. Fence posts every 10 feet. Nothing moving except us and that sound rolling over everything. The siren got louder as we closed distance. Anne put her phone face down on her thigh and just watched the road. I figured tornado sirens and chemical release sirens were probably the same hardware. Small towns don't budget for two separate systems. You mount one unit on the courthouse or the water tower, and it covers everything within a couple miles. Tornado, train derailment, whatever. Same sound, different reason. This one didn't stop for breath. We hit the edge of town, and I slowed to 40. Main Street was a 4-block stretch with the Sinclair on the south end, a Dollar General and a Subway in the middle, and the courthouse square on the north side near the interstate ramps. I'd driven through here maybe 30 times. It usually looked half asleep. Now people were outside, not running, not panicking, just drifting. A woman in a blue vest came out of the Dollar General holding a plastic bag in one hand and her keys in the other. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked up toward the sound. A guy in a Carhartt jacket stood near the courthouse lawn with his hands in his pockets, head tilted back, scanning the sky. 2 more people near the subway. An older man by a parked pickup. All of them doing the same thing. Looking up, then looking at each other, waiting for someone to explain what the siren meant or what they were supposed to do about it. Nobody was moving with any kind of urgency. Anne leaned forward slightly. They don't know either. Yeah. I kept driving. The interstate overpass was ahead and I could see the Love's Travel stop on the east side of the ramps. Big rectangle building with gas pumps out front, diesel lanes on the side, probably a Subway or a Hardee's attached. Largest structure for 10 miles in any direction. Concrete walls, flat roof, loading docks in back. If you needed to get 100 people under one roof in a hurry, that was your spot. I signaled right even though there was no one behind me and took the ramp up toward the interchange. The Love's lot was half full. Maybe a dozen cars, 3 semis in the truck lanes, a white van near the entrance, and people moving between them. A guy in a sheriff's uniform stood near the main doors waving vehicles in with one arm and gesturing pedestrians toward the entrance with the other. Tall, broad across the shoulders, close-cropped dark hair under his campaign hat. He had a radio clipped to his belt and he was using his free hand to key it every few seconds, talking into the shoulder mic, then waving again. I knew him. Not well, but I knew him. I pulled into an open space near the building and put the truck in park. Anne was already unbuckling. "You recognize that deputy?" I asked. She looked. No. Jimmy Lee. Worked a site job with him maybe 3 years ago. Road closure coordination for a bridge pour on 36. Anne nodded and opened her door. The siren was louder here. It bounced off the building and came back at itself, layering the sound until you couldn't tell which direction it started from. I grabbed my phone from my jacket and checked the time. 10:32. Still aligned with Anne's. The truck clock didn't matter anymore. We walked toward the entrance. Jimmy saw us coming and waved us in without recognition. Made sense. 3 years, maybe 50 people on that job, and I'd only talked to him a handful of times. A couple in their 60s approached from the gas pumps. The man had a coffee in one hand. The woman held a receipt. They looked confused, but not scared. Jimmy pointed at the doors. "Inside, folks. Let's get everyone inside." The couple went in. The automatic doors slid open, then closed behind them. 2 more people came from the diesel lanes. A driver in a Peterbilt cap and a younger guy in a hoodie. Jimmy waved them through with the same gesture, economical and repetitive. He keyed his radio again and spoke into the mic. I couldn't hear what he said over the siren. Anne and I stopped a few feet from the entrance. I figured I should say something, establish that I knew him, maybe get more information than the civilians were getting. "Jimmy." He turned and looked at me for the first time. His eyes moved over my face, then down to the high-vis jacket with the CDOT logo on the chest. I saw him place me. "Bush, yeah." He nodded once. "Get inside. We're consolidating." "What's the situation?" "Dispatch lines are flooded. State says get everyone inside and hold them until hazmat arrives." He looked past me toward the road. "You just come in from the south?" "County Road 22. Turned around about 10 miles out." See anything? No, heard the alerts. Felt something weird on the road. Came back. Jimmy's jaw tightened a little. Not much, just enough to notice. Weird how. Pressure, like elevation drop. Road felt soft for a few seconds. He keyed his radio again without responding to that. Spoke into the mic. This is Lee. I've got maybe 20 civilians inside the Loves. Still taking more. Confirming hazmat ETA. Over. Static came back. A voice I couldn't make out. Jimmy listened, then lowered his hand. They don't have an ETA, he said. Not to me. Just out loud. Anne looked at me. I didn't say anything. Jimmy waved 2 more people in from the lot. A woman with a toddler on her hip and a man in a UPS uniform. The doors opened. They went inside. The doors closed. I glanced through the glass. The inside of the Loves looked normal. Fluorescent lights, aisles of travel snacks and sunglasses, a coffee bar near the back. People standing around looking at their phones or talking quietly. Not crowded yet. Not tense. Jimmy turned back to me. You staying or moving on? Staying, I said. Wasn't really a question. Then get inside. I've got 3 more blocks to sweep and I don't need people standing in the lot. Anne moved toward the doors. I followed. The doors didn't open. Anne stopped a foot from the threshold. The sensors were right there. Black boxes mounted above the frame. I could see the little red LEDs blinking. The doors didn't move. Anne stepped back, then forward again. Still nothing. I moved up beside her and waved my hand in front of the sensor. The LED blinked. The doors stayed shut. Behind us, Jimmy noticed. They stuck? Don't think so. I pressed my palm against the glass. It was cold, solid. The doors sat flush in their tracks, sealed tight. From inside, someone noticed us standing there. A guy in a flannel shirt walked over and pushed on the door from his side. It didn't budge. He pushed harder. Nothing. Anne stepped to the side and tried the second set of doors 10 feet down. Same result. Sensors blinking. Doors sealed. The guy inside called to someone else. A woman in a Loves uniform came over. She looked at the control panel mounted on the wall beside the frame, pressed something, then shook her head. She tried pulling the doors apart manually. They didn't move. Jimmy walked up beside me. He looked at the doors, then at the people inside pressing against the glass. Power's on, Anne said. Sensors are active. Yeah. I stepped back and looked at the building. Lights on inside. Cameras mounted under the awning. Everything running. The doors just wouldn't open. Jimmy keyed his radio. This is Lee. We have a situation at the Loves. Automatic doors are non-responsive. Requesting maintenance or override instructions. Over. Static. Then a voice, clipped and distant. Stand by. We stood there. The siren kept wailing. The people inside kept pressing on the glass. I looked at Jimmy. He looked at the doors. And I knew. Not something mechanical. Not a malfunction. Not a jam track or a blown relay. Something else. Something blocking them that had nothing to do with the hardware at all. Anne felt it too. She stepped back from the glass and looked at me. I didn't say it out loud, didn't need to. The doors weren't going to open. I stepped back from the main entrance and looked left along the building. Side door, I said. Anne followed without saying anything. Jimmy stayed at the front, radio pressed to his ear, watching us move along the storefront. The siren kept cycling overhead. We walked maybe 30 feet. There was a smaller entrance tucked between the main doors and the diesel pump canopy, the kind staff probably used for smoke breaks or truck deliveries. Metal frame, same tinted glass as the front. I could see the interior through it. Bright fluorescent wash, chip racks in straight rows, refrigerator case along the back wall glowing white and blue. I reached for the handle. Locked. Not surprising. Then I saw the chain. It was looped through the interior push bar. wrapped twice, secured with a padlock about the size of my palm. Heavy, galvanized links, the kind you'd use on a storage unit or gate. Someone had chained it from the inside. Anne leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging it slightly. That's weird. Yeah. I pressed my hand to the door and scanned the interior through the window. Everything looked normal, fully stocked. Candy bars lined up perfect on their hooks. Coffee station in the back corner with the pots sitting on their burners, little red lights showing they were still heating. Napkin dispensers, creamer station. Rows of travel mugs and sunglasses and phone chargers under the usual white LED strips. But nothing moved. No cashier behind the counter. No customer browsing the aisles. No one restocking. No one cleaning. No one standing around on their phone waiting for the bathroom. Just rows of product under bright lights and total stillness. I shifted my angle and checked the counter area more carefully. The register was closed. No receipt tape hanging out. No bills visible in the drawer gap. A small monitor sat beside it, probably showing fuel totals or security feeds, but the screen was black. There was a half-full coffee cup next to the keyboard, white ceramic, steam rising off it in a thin line. Fresh coffee, nobody drinking it. Anne's shoulder brushed mine as she leaned in. Where'd they go? Don't know. I looked up at the ceiling near the entrance. 2 security cameras were mounted there, angled down to cover the door and the first few aisles. Standard setup, dome housings, little tinted bubbles so you couldn't tell exactly where the lens pointed. I'd seen the same type in every gas station from Denver to the Kansas line. The recording lights were off. Normally, those things had a small red LED somewhere on the housing, blinking or solid, letting you know the camera was active. Loss prevention basics. These didn't. Both cameras were dark, no lights, no indication they were running. I stared at them for a few seconds. Power was clearly on. The lights worked, the coffee was hot, the refrigerator cases were running. But the cameras were dead. Anne noticed where I was looking. She didn't say anything, just tilted her head slightly and kept watching through the glass. I stepped back and checked the side lot. 2 cars parked near the building, a sedan and a Subaru wagon. Both empty. No one sitting inside, no one walking between the rows. The diesel pumps stood silent under their canopy, nozzles hanging in their cradles. I couldn't hear any engines running, couldn't hear anything except the siren. Someone locked it from inside, Anne said quietly. Yeah. And then left. I didn't answer. That was the logical read, but didn't sit right. You don't chain a door from the inside unless you're still in there. That's the whole point. Anne reached out and touched the chain. She jerked her hand back immediately, fast enough that I heard her sleeve snap. What? She held her hand up, fingers spread, staring at her palm. It's warm. I looked at the chain again. Galvanized steel. Sitting in the shade of the overhang, ambient temp, probably mid-40s. No reason for it to be warm. I moved closer and held my hand near the links without touching them. About an inch away. I felt it. A faint vibration, barely there, running through the metal. Not movement exactly. More like current. The way a live wire hums if you get close enough. Subtle, steady, wrong. I pulled my hand back. Anne was watching me. You felt it? Yeah. What is that? Don't know. I didn't. I'd worked around electrical conduit, junction boxes, transformers, high voltage lines strung across half the state. This wasn't the same. It wasn't 60-cycle hum or magnetic buzz. It was something else. Something that made my teeth itch. I looked at the coffee cup on the counter again, still steaming. We're not getting in here, I said. Anne nodded. I turned and walked back toward the main entrance. Jimmy was still there, radio down, watching a woman in a Broncos sweatshirt try the doors from the outside. while a guy in a trucker cap pushed from within. Neither made progress. I stopped a few feet from Jimmy. Side doors chained. From the inside. He looked at me, then past me toward the side entrance, then back. Chained? Yeah. Staff do that? Don't think so. Jimmy's jaw worked for a second. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Loves is a no-go for shelter. Repeat, Loves is not accessible. Requesting alternate location guidance. Static. Then a voice, clipped and distant. Copy, 12. Courthouse basement is cleared. Repeat, courthouse basement cleared for civilian shelter. Jimmy released the key. He looked at me. You heard that? Yeah. Courthouse is 2 blocks north. You know where it is? I nodded. I'd driven past it 20 minutes ago. Older building, tan brick, probably 1920s construction. It sat on the north end of Maine, right before the interstate overpass. I remembered seeing a man standing on the lawn in a Carhartt jacket, hands in his pockets, looking up at nothing. Go now, Jimmy said. I've got 2 more blocks to sweep, then I'll route everyone there. Ann was already moving toward the truck. I followed, keys in hand. We got in. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot, turning north onto Main. The siren kept going. Same cycle, same pitch. I checked the mirrors. Jimmy was walking toward a cluster of people near the subway, waving them toward his cruiser. I drove slow, maybe 25. The street was almost empty. A couple of parked cars. No one walking. The Dollar General's lights were on. Door closed. No movement inside. I reached the intersection at 2nd Street. The light was red. I stopped out of habit, foot on the brake, watching the cross street. A pickup rolled through from my right. Ford F-250, dark blue, probably 10 years old. It moved at a steady 15 miles per hour, perfectly centered in its lane. It rolled through the red light without slowing, crossing directly in front of me about 30 feet ahead. There was no one in the cab. I could see straight through the windows. Driver's seat empty. Passenger seat empty. No hands on the wheel. No head visible above the dash. Just an empty truck, rolling smooth and level. Tires tracking straight. Engine running. It continued through the intersection and kept going west on 2nd, steady speed, steady line, until it passed out of sight behind a single-story brick building on the corner. Ann didn't say anything. I didn't either. The light turned green. I eased forward, checked both directions, and kept driving north. My hands were tight on the wheel. I loosened them deliberately, one finger at a time, then gripped again. The courthouse came into view ahead. Tan brick, 3 stories, flat roof with a small cupola in the center. Stone steps leading up to double doors. The lawn was empty now. No man in a Carhartt jacket. No one at all. I slowed further, coasting. And that's when I noticed it. The quiet. The siren was still going. I could hear it. But it sounded different now. Muffled, distant. Not like it was farther away, but like there was something between me and the source. Something dense. I rolled my window down. The siren came through, but it felt thin. Stretched. I couldn't hear anything else. No wind. No engine noise from other vehicles. No birds. No distant highway hum from the interstate overpass a block ahead. Nothing. Ann was looking out her window, head tilted slightly, listening. I stopped the truck in the middle of Main Street. No reason to pull over. There was no one behind me. No one ahead. I put it in park and sat there, window down, listening. The siren cycled, rose and fell. But it felt wrong. Felt like I was hearing it through water or from the far end of a long pipe. The sound was there, but the air around it was dead. I held my breath and listened harder. Nothing. Not a single ambient sound. No wind brushing the grass. No flags snapping on poles. No gravel crunching under tires somewhere out of sight. Just the siren, thin and far, and silence underneath it. Anne spoke quietly. "Do you hear that?" "No," I said. "That's the problem." The courthouse basement had that municipal smell. Old paper and floor wax and something metallic from the pipes. Anne went down first and I followed, keeping one hand on the rail because the steps were narrow and worn smooth in the middle. The records room was at the bottom on the left. Door stood open. Lights on. Nobody inside. A clerk's purse sat on a rolling chair, one of those tan leather bags with the long strap. Open. I could see a wallet and keys and a pack of gum. A space heater ran beside a stack of file boxes against the wall. Orange coil glowing, ticking every few seconds the way they do. The desk had a half-finished can of Diet Coke next to a keyboard. Condensation still beating on the aluminum. Anne looked at me. I stepped into the hall and called out, "Anyone down here?" My voice went flat against the cinder block. No echo, no answer. I tried again, louder. "Hello?" Nothing. Anne walked to the far end of the room where metal shelving held banker boxes labeled by year. She touched one of the boxes, then pulled her hand back and wiped it on her jeans. Dust, probably. Or she just didn't like the feel of it. I didn't blame her. I checked the hall again. 3 doors, all open. One led to a storage closet with mops and a yellow bucket. One was a bathroom, single toilet, light off. The third was another records room, smaller, with a microfilm reader on a table and boxes stacked floor to ceiling, all empty. "They just left," Anne said behind me. I came back into the main room. She was standing by the desk now, looking at the Diet Coke. Yeah. Mid-shift, whatever they were doing. I didn't argue. The space heater kept ticking. The purse sat there with the wallet visible, which nobody does if they're stepping out on purpose. You take your purse, you turn off the heater. That's basic. Anne opened one of the desk drawers. I didn't stop her. Felt wrong, maybe, but less wrong than standing around doing nothing. She pulled out pens, a stapler, some sticky notes. Then she opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a small radio. Portable no AA weather radio, the kind with the crank handle on the side and the yellow plastic casing. Probably left over from tornado season or a preparedness kit. She held it up. "Think it works?" "Maybe." She extended the antenna and turned the dial. Static came through, thin and scratchy. She kept turning, moving through the frequencies. More static, then a break, a pause, and a voice. Male, talking fast. "Eyes down, do not look directly. Keep lights off if you can. If you're inside, stay inside. If you're..." The voice cut off. Just stopped mid-word. Then the static collapsed into something else. A hum. Low and steady, and wrong. It didn't sound like interference or a dead channel. It sounded deliberate. Anne's face went tight. She held the radio out toward me and I took it. The plastic rattled in my hand. Not from me shaking. From the hum. The sound vibrated through the casing and I felt it in my teeth. A dull ache that started in my molars and pushed forward. I turned the dial off and the hum stopped. The rattling stopped. My teeth still ached. I set the radio on the desk next to the Diet Coke and stepped back. Anne didn't say anything. Neither did I. We both just looked at it. Then the building shook. One hard jolt, like something massive had dropped onto the roof. The floor jumped under my boots. The shelving rattled and one of the banker boxes slid forward an inch. Dust fell from the ceiling tiles in fine streams drifting down through the fluorescent light. I grabbed the doorframe. Anne braced against the desk. The space heater tipped forward and I lunged and caught it before it hit the floor. Coil still glowing orange. I set it upright and unplugged it because that felt like the right thing to do. The shaking stopped as fast as it started. Anne looked up at the ceiling. "What was that?" "Don't know." I didn't. Could have been a sonic boom. Could have been something else. Didn't feel like an earthquake. I've been through 2 small ones and they roll. This was a single hit. sharp and gone. I moved into the hall and headed for the stairs. Anne followed. We went up fast, taking the steps 2 at a time, and came out into the main lobby. Tile floor, wooden benches along the walls, bulletin board with public notices pinned in crooked rows, windows on the front overlooking Main Street. I went to the nearest window and looked out. The sky was wrong, not the color. Still gray, still overcast. But the air between me and the clouds had these ripples in it, like heat shimmer off asphalt in summer, except vertical. Sheets of it, stacked and sliding against each other, moving left to right and then right to left with no pattern I could track. Anne came up beside me. "You see that?" "Yeah." "What is it?" "I don't know." I kept watching. The ripples didn't line up with the wind. The grass in the courthouse lawn wasn't moving. The flag on the pole across the street hung limp. But the air kept shimmering, kept sliding, and the longer I looked, the more my eyes started to hurt. I stepped back from the window. My phone was in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out and checked the screen. 10:41, 3 bars of signal. I pulled up my contacts and found Kai Banks, my supervisor, the guy who'd sent me out here in the first place to swap the anemometer and close the work order before the weekend snow hit. I hit call. It rang twice, then it connected. Yeah, not Kai's voice. Someone younger, flatter. I frowned. "This is Caleb Bush, CDOT. I'm trying to reach Kai Banks." A pause. Then, "He's unavailable right now. I'm in Limon. We've got emergency alerts going off. Courthouse is empty and something's wrong with..." "It's a routine training exercise," the voice said. Calm. Too calm. "Multi-agency coordination drill. You're in the right place. Stay inside and await further instructions." I stopped, looked at Anne. She was watching me. "This isn't a drill," I said. "We've got..." "Do not leave Limon," the voice said. Still calm, still flat. "Shelter in place until the all clear is issued." Behind him, I heard other voices, muffled like he had his hand over the mic or was in a room with the door half closed. Someone was arguing. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was sharp, urgent. "Who am I talking to?" I asked. The line went dead. I pulled the phone away and looked at the screen. Call ended. 3 bars still showing. I tried calling back. Straight to a busy signal, not voicemail. Busy. Anne stepped closer. "What did they say?" "Training exercise. Stay inside. Don't leave town." Her mouth tightened. "You believe that?" I looked at the phone, then at the window. The ripples were still there, sliding against the clouds. "No." I put the phone back in my pocket. The courthouse basement had felt like shelter when we'd first come down. Walls, roof, thick foundation. The kind of place you're supposed to go when the sirens start. But standing there in the empty lobby with dust still settling from the ceiling tiles, and that voice telling me to stay put, it didn't feel like shelter anymore. It felt like a holding pen. Anne was looking at me, waiting. I didn't have an answer for her yet, but staying in the basement wasn't it. I chose outside. Probably not smart. Anne didn't argue when I pushed the courthouse door open and walked back down the steps. She followed. The ripples in the air had stopped, but the street felt wrong. Emptier than it should have been, even with everyone supposedly sheltering. 2 cars parked along Main, both driver's seats vacant. A school bus sat at the curb, maybe 50 yards down, with its door folded open and the engine still running. Yellow paint, black lettering. No children inside. No driver either. I could see straight through the windshield to the back row of green vinyl seats. Anne stopped beside me on the bottom step. She looked at the bus, then at me. "Where'd they go?" she said. I didn't know. The siren kept cycling, same pitch, same rhythm. It came from a white pole near the Dollar General with speakers mounted on a crossbar about 30 feet up. I'd seen poles like that in a dozen Plains towns. Tornado warning infrastructure. Mostly they sat quiet. A man crouched near the base of the pole with his hands clamped over his ears. Stocky build, worn cap, tow company jacket with a logo I couldn't read from this distance. Maybe 5'9". He was rocking forward and back on his heels. I walked toward him. Anne stayed close. The man didn't look up until we were maybe 10 feet away, and when he did, his eyes were red and wet. "You hear that?" he said. I stopped. "The siren." "No." He shook his head hard, hands still pressed to his ears. "Not the siren. Her. My wife. She's calling me." Anne glanced at me. I kept my eyes on the guy. "Calling from where?" I said. He pointed straight up. "Above the roof. She keeps saying my name. George, George, over and over." His voice cracked. "She's supposed to be in Hugo. She works in Hugo, but she's up there and she won't stop." I looked up. The clouds were gray and low, same as they'd been all morning. But there was something moving through them. A shape. Dark, maybe black. Hard to tell with the cloud cover. It slid from west to east at a steady pace. Too smooth to be a plane. No wings, no contrail, no engine noise. Too steady to be a shadow because shadows don't move through clouds. They move under them. I watched it pass directly over Main Street. The siren's pitch dropped mid-cycle. Not a fade. A drop. It went from the high wail to a mechanical click, click, click. Like someone had switched it to a different mode or the motor had seized. Then it cut out completely. The silence hit harder than the noise. George, I figured that was his name from what he'd said, lowered his hands slowly. He stared up at the clouds where the shape had been. It was gone now, or behind thicker cover. I couldn't tell. My radio crackled. Not my phone. The handheld clipped to my belt. I'd forgotten I was even carrying it. We used them on job sites when cell service dropped or we needed quick coordination across a crew. This one was set to county emergency band from a project last year when we coordinated with county crews on a bridge repair. I unclipped it and turned up the volume. All units, keep civilians inside large buildings. Courthouse, loves, any structure with multiple rooms. Do not let them disperse to vehicles or residences. Repeat, consolidate, and hold. Jimmy's voice came back. Copy. What's the containment reason? A pause. Static. Then a different voice. Older, flatter. Weather-related hazard. Multi-agency response inbound. Do not mention lift events to civilians. Acknowledge. Copy, Jimmy said. Acknowledged. The channel went quiet. I looked at Anne. She'd heard it too. Lift events. George was still staring up at the clouds. His hands hung at his sides now. He wasn't rocking anymore. I thought about the phone call with Kai's office. The voice saying it was a training exercise. The muffled argument in the background. The order to stay inside and not leave town. The reassurances weren't about protecting us. They were about keeping us in place. I put the radio back on my belt, but left the volume up. The shape came back. Lower this time. Maybe 1,000 feet. It slid out of the cloud cover on the east side of town and moved west along Main Street. Still too smooth, still no sound. But now I could see it wasn't a solid shape. It was more like a distortion. A space where the air bent wrong and light didn't go through clean. The pressure came with it. Same feeling as before on County Road 22. My ears popped. The air got thick, like trying to breathe through a wet cloth. Anne grabbed my arm and I felt her nails dig in through my jacket sleeve. I heard engines. 2 black SUVs rolled onto Main from the north, from the direction of the interstate. Behind them came a truck, not civilian, military. Flat green paint, canvas cover over the bed, National Guard markings on the door. The SUVs split and boxed in the courthouse, one on the west side of the building, one on the south near where we parked. The truck stopped in the middle of the street about 40 yards from where I stood. The rear flap opened and 6 soldiers climbed out. Fatigues, helmets, sidearms, no rifles. They moved without hurry and took positions around the courthouse perimeter. A man in fatigues stepped down from the passenger side of the truck. Older, maybe 50. Major's insignia on his collar. His name tape was blank. Just a strip of tan fabric with no letters. He walked toward us, calm, steady, hands loose at his sides. "Folks," he said, "I need you to head back inside, basement level. We've got a shelter coordinator down there who'll get you squared away." I stared at him. "There's nobody in the basement." "There will be," he said. His tone didn't change. "We're routing everyone there now. Safest place until we get the all clear." "All clear from what?" Ann said. The major smiled. "Professional, empty. Weather event, atmospheric disturbance. Nothing to worry about, just a precaution." I looked past him at the soldiers. They weren't watching us. They were watching the sky. "What's a lift event?" I said. His smile didn't move. "I'm not familiar with that term." The pressure spiked. I felt it in my chest this time, not just my ears. The air pressed down and in from all sides. Ann made a small noise and bent forward slightly. George let out a breath like he'd been punched. The major kept talking. "If you'll just head inside, we'll have this resolved shortly. Hot coffee downstairs, I'm told. Shouldn't be more than an hour or 2. I looked south down Main Street. The Love's doors were opening. Both sets, the main entrance and the side door we'd checked earlier. They slid open smooth and slow with no one near them. The glass reflected gray sky. I could see the interior past the entrance. The chip racks, the coffee station, the fluorescent lights still on. Nobody came out. George stood up. He took a step toward the Loves, then another. His hands came up slightly, reaching forward like someone was pulling him. "George," I said. He didn't stop. He walked past the major, past the soldiers, past the SUV. Steady pace, eyes on the Love's entrance. The major kept smiling at us. Basement's right through the main doors, can't miss it. George was maybe 20 feet from the Loves when he stopped walking. His feet left the ground, not a jump, not a stumble. He just lifted, straight up, smooth. His arms stayed reaching forward, and his head tilted back as he rose past the Love's roof, past the siren pole, up into the gray clouds until I couldn't see him anymore. The major was still talking. "Coordination with state emergency management, so if you'll just..." Ann made a sound, half gasp, half something else. I grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back toward the courthouse steps. She moved with me. The major stepped aside and gestured toward the doors, still calm, still smiling, like a man watching nothing happen. I got Ann to the bottom step, then I stopped. The truck was right there. 30 yards, keys in my pocket, ham radio in the cab. "Go inside," I said. Ann looked at me. "What?" "Go inside, basement. I'll be right behind you." She didn't move. "Go," I said. She went. I watched her climb the steps and push through the courthouse doors. One of the soldiers glanced her way but didn't follow. I ran. Not toward the courthouse. Toward the CDOT truck parked on the south side. I kept my head down and my stride even, like I was just heading to grab something I forgot. The major called out behind me, but I didn't stop. I reached the driver's door, yanked it open, climbed in, slammed it shut. Keys in the ignition. I turned them and the engine caught. The ham radio sat in the center console where I'd left it yesterday after a job near Deer Trail. Bigger than the handheld, better range. I flipped it on and the green display lit up. I put the truck in drive and rolled forward, no headlights. The soldiers turned toward me but didn't move to block. I took the first right off Main onto 2nd Street, accelerated to 40, then 50. The pressure pushed at the windshield. I felt the truck drift left slightly and corrected. The air outside looked thick now, not foggy, just dense, like I was driving through something heavier than air. The ham radio crackled. "Anyone still mobile? This is Tony Hill eastbound on 70 near Strasburg. If you're getting this, respond." I grabbed the mic. "This is Caleb Bush, CDOT, leaving Limon eastbound. Copy you, Tony." Static. Then, "Copy, Caleb. You said Limon?" "Yeah. Why?" A pause, longer than I liked. "Exit signs out here don't list Limon anymore," Tony said. "They list 39, 40th, 41, but no Limon, just mile markers." I checked my mirrors. The courthouse was behind me now, the soldiers, the major, all of it. The street ahead curved east toward the county road that would take me back to the interstate. "I'm leaving it now," I said. "Copy that," Tony said. "Keep your lights off. And Caleb, don't stop." The pressure thinned, not fast, gradual, like driving out from under something. My ears popped again, and the windshield stopped feeling like it was bending inward. I checked the dash clock, 10:52. Right time. Not backward, not frozen. Right. I should have turned around, gone back for Anne, confirmed she was safe, that the basement was actually shelter and not something worse. I kept driving, because turning back felt like accepting the same invisible order that had lifted George Ortega straight into the sky and sealed everyone else behind walls they couldn't leave, and I wasn't ready to accept that yet.